I would venture to say most people were using some optic. Probably we were in a VLK meta by then. And the Growl was really interesting because it had a great stat line. It had a pretty high fire rate, so it was fairly forgiving. Good enough velocity, all that stuff. But uniquely, for the first time in Warzone, it had such good iron sights that you would just rather use that than an optic of any kind, including a VLK. And that freed up an attachment slot, so it blew the whole thing wide open because the optic was the iron sights were so good. They were, to this day, I think, the best iron sights I've ever seen in Warzone.
Yeah.
I mean, they were so good, so clean. Activision devs do not play their own game.
3,000 devs can't figure out how to add a reconnect feature to a AAA title, I guess. I don't know.
Because Infinity Ward doesn't tell their consumers anything.
Maybe that'll take some of the sweats away from Shoot House.
You can cope about that, for sure.
Thanks for tweeting, at least. Thanks for doing more than Infinity Ward has done. They just keep tweeting about the soccer bundles in the store.
Things that are bad. We got a couple words. Why don't you kick it off, Tanner?
This is going to be a longer section than the first part you guys heard.
Change it, obviously, of course. We are not live, but we are recording. Boys and girls also, maybe. Probably not. Maybe. Couple. Welcome. Unwitting girls, I should say. We've had a lot of comments in the history of this program where people will tell us, listeners will tell us, oh, I was listening to this episode on a car ride with my girlfriend or wife or whatever, and she said something about whatever.
Said you guys are
You
dumb.
guys said. Usually it's like, oh, like Razinon has the best voice for broadcasting I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave you for him. I've gotten a lot of those. Unfortunately, I feel bad doing that. So there are probably a good amount of ladies listening, but not on purpose at all. So something to keep in mind. And welcome to the show.
W Women.
W Women. We do support women on this broadcast. And today we will be talking about something that many of us would probably like to use on our women.
Oh.
And that is, of course, weapons.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Mostly fully automatic guns.
Yeah.
Assault rifles, submachine guns, shotguns, maybe RPGs if we've been in a real long marriage, right, fellas? Am I right? So anyways, welcome to the show. Yeah. Today, at the time of recording this, actually, it is the 23rd of the 4th month. Whatever that is. April? Yeah. I'm not good at that. If I look at a month number, I'm not great at like figuring out what month that is. Like the name of it. Yeah.
Skill issue.
Some of them I'm good at.
Yeah.
You know, like 12.
Yeah, that one's pretty
December.
easy. 1.
12 and 1 are good. Yeah.
Yeah. 6?
But-
You know 6?
No. June?
Wow. Yeah, it's June. Uh-huh.
I can guess. I can take a stab in the dark. Anyways, welcome to the show. Yeah, so today, anyways, again, it is the 23rd of the 4th month, which we just decided was April. And we are pre-recording this episode, which is not going to release for a couple of weeks, because Tanner, at the time you are hearing this, dear listeners, maybe
listener. Yeah, who knows?
Maybe.
It
Yeah,
could be
we'll see.
Not even listener soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Tanner's out of town. He's going up to, of course, Zion National Park and doing that. So we wanted to, and he's got a busy couple of weeks coming up at the time of recording. So we're just getting something prepared for you guys, and something that you have enjoyed a lot in the past, which is another tier list. We're doing another tier list. So we've done 2 of these episodes before, both of which were on POIs in Warzone maps. And again, I mean, according to the analytics and the feedback we've gotten, you guys really enjoyed those 2 episodes. So we figured what would be something we can record way ahead of time that will still be fun, engaging, and relevant to you by the time it releases. Because as you guys probably know, if you've been listening for a while, a lot of the episodes we do are very time sensitive. And it's hard to pre-record things for this podcast when the game just changes so often. So a tier list of the type we're doing today is easy to do ahead of time because it's kind of evergreen. And basically what we're doing today, episode 425, is ranking all of the Warzone metas that we've had for guns. I mean, obviously there have been like perk metas and stuff like that. We're not doing that. Almost certainly ever, but certainly not today. What we've done instead is we got a tier list of all of the asterisk on that weapon metas we've had since the launch of Warzone. So we have a batch of weapons from MW19, Cold War, all the way up through now, MW3. So we got quite a few games to go through and quite a few weapons as well. And we are going to rank the metas basically attached to these weapons. And we're going to rank them kind of in terms of how fun the meta was or enjoyable the meta was for us. And that's a little complicated because there are going to be some things like, for example, we had like the Dragon's Breath meta, right? The Dragon's Breath in terms of its effectiveness was S tier, but in terms of like a fun meta, it was not S tier. And we'll get more into that. But we're going to rank it not in terms of how effective each of these guns are or weapons are, but in terms of how fun of a meta they were.
Fun, memorable.
Which is fun, memorable. We look back on it fondly. And obviously that's going to entail, for me, a lot of that is going to be based on how balanced it was as well. But we'll get more into that as we get to each particular weapon. Now, keep in mind, we probably forgot some weapons here, to be clear.
Most definitely there will be some guns that we'll go through this whole list and realize there was like a very obvious, extremely popular gun that's not on here, and someone's typing in the comments and they're going to get mad. Oh well, you'll get over it. It'll all be fine, trust me. But yeah. I think most of them are on here.
We've got most of them, but yeah, we probably forgot a couple. There are a lot of guns, and what constituted like meta is also like an interesting question. And there were also things that were only meta for like a week, actually. So those are very easy to forget as well, unless they were really insane. And we'll get into it. But that's what we're doing for today. Let us know if you guys enjoy this episode. And I'm sure we could do other tier lists in the future as well. Again, these are cool episodes because we can do them at any time. And we can pre-record them way ahead of time. And also, you guys really seem to enjoy them. So we'll definitely do another tier list at some point in the future. Not sure on what we would do that, but if you guys have any ideas or you want to hear us do a tier list episode again on some particular topic, let us know. And we will bank it and eventually do it in the future. So, and shout out to for making this tier list as well, by the way.
W. Great work out there, man.
Went through a lot of effort. We appreciate it. And this time it looks very good. So other than that, we may or may not have relevant announcements right now. I don't know, because we're pre-recording this 3 weeks before you're hearing it. So if you're listening for the jingle, here it is.
The world could be like ended for all we know. Could be over.
That's true.
By the time this goes live. This might not even go live.
World War III.
Yeah.
Iran could be lobbing nukes at San Francisco.
W bombs. I wouldn't be too mad about that if they did it to San Francisco, honestly.
Well, I think nukes have gotten pretty good.
Have they?
Since in the last 80 years, yeah. I don't know if you'd be.
They should test one.
Safe.
We should test one somewhere.
Test it on your new house, yeah. All right, today, episode 425. And he meant the state, not the people, of course. Warzone metas tier list.
Wow.
So again, like we said, we are going to rank all of these guns based on the metas they created and how fun we found them or enjoyable we found them. Not on how effective the gun is, not on how overpowered it is, but on how good the meta was that came out of it. And we're going to go through in a particular order, actually, by game. So we're going to start at the very beginning, MW19, go through all the meta guns that we were able to remember, and then take it all the way chronologically through to MW3, which is the game we have now. Within each game, they're not like alphabetical or anything, but this is good enough, I would say. So
yeah, I think they're nope, I was gonna say maybe they're in like order of like the weapon category. No, so we've already messed up. We have already messed up the tier list, so it's terrible. L.
Stay humble.
Yeah.
We shouldn't even do it.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyways, so
starting off hot here, buddy. Wow.
Yeah, the first gun I have, we probably have the same order, is the Grau 5.56.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one.
So we are starting extremely strong.
Yeah.
With this one. Strong as we possibly could. Oh, by the way, when this episode is over, hopefully we remember to, we will post our tier lists in Discord.
Yeah.
And we will pin them if you guys want to look at them yourselves. I'll post mine. Tanner will post his. I will be obviously putting them in each tier. And then the closer to the left in the tier, the higher the ranking. So I'm going to also order them within tiers, just like I did for the maps. You guys, if you want to see it, you might have to remind us to post it in Discord, because I don't want to post it 3 weeks. Like
once
right
the
now.
episode goes live, we'll probably remember to do it. Yeah, we can just post it in internal for now, so they're pre-saved, and then we can just copy and paste them.
So anyway, yeah, join the Discord. Look for that. We'll post it in Dropshot General. So, all right, now the Grau 5.56. Yeah, I mean, this was if I remember correctly, very early DLC gun. I don't think it was in season like 1, but I think it was within like the first 3 seasons of Verdansk that we got the Grau as one of the new guns in like the battle pass for that season. And
season 2, yep, came in season 2.
Season 2, okay, yeah, super early. And pretty much as soon as it came out, it was meta. Now, keep in mind, back in the day, back in Verdansk days, building guns and like using attachments and stuff, very simple. All you did was you threw on the same 5 attachments. Especially for ARs, this was true. SMGs/secondaries, there was some build variety sometimes. Usually not too much, but in terms of primaries, for those of you who forgot, it was always the same. It was very easy to build a new gun. So a new DLC gun would come out. You would throw on the 5 attachments that are best, because they're always best no matter what gun you put it on. with very few exceptions for primaries. And then you evaluate how it does compared to whatever gun was meta before that, to kind of evaluate it. And the Growl in season 2, I guess, was the first gun we got where, well, here's another thing I don't remember very well. I don't know how long it took for the VLK to become meta.
Yeah,
I don't know if people were on it in like season 0 and season 1 yet. Because I don't believe the VLK was like very early on recognized as being the best optic to use most of the time for your primary. So I actually don't know, but I would venture to say most people were using some optic. Probably we were in a VLK meta by then. And the Growl was really interesting because it had a great stat line. It had a pretty high fire rate, so it was fairly forgiving. Good enough velocity, all that stuff. But uniquely, for the first time in Warzone, it had such good iron sights that you would just rather use that than an optic of any kind, including a VLK. And that freed up an attachment slot, so it blew the whole thing wide open. Because now you had a free attachment slot because the optic was so, or the iron sights were so good. They were, to this day, I think, the best iron sights I've ever seen in Warzone.
Yeah.
I mean, they were so good, so clean. The gun did not recoil very much with all those meta attachments. And I don't even remember what people used as that fifth attachment. I would venture to say stippled grip tape, which is the ADS and sprint to fire.
Would have been mag, suppressor, under barrel, and rear grip, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think once you drop that VLK, you could put on that little stippled, which was cool too. And this was meta for a long, long time, it felt like. And it was really good. It was really fun. And it's an obvious S tier. It was an obvious S tier meta. It wasn't overpowered. I don't think it was overpowered. I think it was just fun to use and good, basically.
I mean, it's probably a top 3 Warzone favorite for most people. I would say it's a top 3 meta gun. Honestly, Grau, it might even be the most popular AR we've had in Warzone. That, and a lot of people like the Kilo, which we'll get into. But certainly Grau is in, I would say, almost everybody's top 3. If not, it's number 1. So yeah, starting off real strong there. I agree. I don't think we were in a VLK meta at that point, though, anyways, because I think season 1, it was this next gun here, which was the M4, and I remember running an M4 iron sights as well a lot. So I feel like the VLK meta, yeah, I don't know when that came. Must have been after that.
But M4 was like season 0. Keep that in mind. I think. Or no, Warzone came out with season 1, didn't it? I think Warzone dropped with season 1. Actually.
Wait, no. Warzone would have dropped with season 2 because it came out in March. Yeah, you're right. So the Grau actually dropped right when Warzone dropped.
But it wasn't. The M4 was meta before the Grau, wasn't it? Maybe people
I thought
just didn't
maybe
catch
it was
on to
after. They were both really good, so I'm not sure. I don't know. It was also new at the time. Nobody knew anything about the game.
Yeah,
you knew
exactly.
nothing about the meta attachments. So I don't remember how early the Grau was discovered, but it doesn't really matter. It's S tier for sure.
Yeah, undoubtedly. So, yeah, and that takes us to our next gun. This is probably the first meta gun ever, which is pretty crazy looking back on the history of Warzone. What was the first like meta gun? And it was the M4. For those of you who don't remember, in MW19, the M4 in like multiplayer before Warzone dropped was it was incredibly overpowered in multiplayer. It was so good. It had so many attachments too. Like it had more barrels than I swear every other gun in MW19. It had so many barrels, and there were so many ways to build it for multiplayer. And it's an M4. M4s have really high fire rate. and good stat lines in like most games. So it was also like quite forgiving. And it's just a classic gun. It's an M4. People like M4s. Everyone knows what an M4 is. Like the most casual players, you know, who don't know anything about guns. Like you ask your grandma to name like an assault rifle, she'd probably say AR-15, I guess. But like M4, just a solid little item. And a lot of people were abusing it in multiplayer because it was overpowered in multiplayer, super overpowered. And it was an Infinity Ward game, so it wasn't nerfed for like 8 months, actually. It was disgusting.
It probably never was. I think that was the AR they ran in the CDL the whole year, right? Pretty sure.
I would imagine it was.
Well, plus you could run like no stock and get insane mobility on it in multiplayer, while also still having a 60-round mag that reloaded super fast. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really, really good. And then when Warzone dropped, again, like Tanner just said, everyone was still kind of like new to Warzone and the time to kill difference and all that stuff. And like all the data we have and like sim.gg, we didn't have any of that when the game launched. So people were like, okay, well, if this gun's good in multiplayer, it's probably also good in Warzone. Of course you would think that. And it was good in Warzone. So this was like the first meta gun. However, I will say, I don't remember using it myself too much in Warzone.
Really?
Honestly.
I use it a lot.
I don't.
I love the M4.
I'm sure I did use it, but I just don't recall exactly.
Yeah. I remember using the iron sight M4 a lot because the M4 too had the different barrels that would change your iron sights pretty substantially too. So
True.
People would run different builds that had a lot different irons. If I'm not mistaken, there was even some sort of bundle with the M4. I want to say it was called like the XRK something. It was a bundle that completely changed the irons like a lot too. So besides the barrels changing them, some of the bundles made them look different as well. There were a lot of things going on there that we don't see so much of anymore. But that was cool too, because there was like some builds I just hated, but if you ran like one specific barrel, the irons were really good. Like the Grenadier one had the good irons. That was the long barrel too, so that was a popular optic. Where it looked like,
that's right.
That was a really good one. Yeah, I loved the M4. I'm actually going S tier with this gun as well. This was one of my absolute favorites. Love this thing, so fun. Because even in Warzone, you could get away with no stock build. It's like kind of crazy looking back that you could run an assault rifle with no stock, and it was still fairly accurate. Like an M4 with no stock in Warzone 1 had the same amount of recoil that like a full recoil build in our current game has. Like you could get away with it, and so you have really good mobility still. You can beam people. That was a fun gun. That's S tier for me. I loved that sucker.
Yeah. And another reason, to be fair though, another reason you could get away with that, I think, is because people were not privy to like kilo VLKs and stuff. If everyone knew the meta right away, I don't think that would actually be that viable, but no one did yet. So you could get closer to people, I think, early on in Warzone, because people were not really, they were either sniping or they were using, like red dots and like, or irons.
Yeah.
Because it basically just using multiplayer builds. So you didn't have to compete with people using VLK kilos. So you having a little recoil like didn't matter because people weren't shooting you and landing every shot from 80 meters away yet.
Yeah.
With that said though, for me, it's just not, it wasn't very memorable. So I don't know. It wasn't like bad, but it wasn't particularly interesting to me. This is going to go in B. It was fun. That's how I would put it. So, moving on. I don't know if this was ever meta. So,
yeah, this is kind of a forgettable one for me.
The Origin 12. This was the semi-auto shotgun. You could put a like drum mag on it for, I think it had 25 rounds. Although most people put the 12 round extendos on it in Warzone. And it wasn't ever that popular to my knowledge because it wasn't that good. This was a gun that was like really insane in multiplayer, especially on certain maps like Shipment or something. But I don't remember this ever being like dominant in Warzone like some other shotguns we'll get into were. So I don't know. This is also like B tier.
You know, I think
no, it's C tier.
I think this was
C-tier.
actually broken right around the same time the R9 was.
Really?
Because I'm thinking back and I'm thinking of a specific memory on Verdansk on the far west side of the map, kind of by all those hills and everything, and there was a buy station there. It was like a train station building or something, or some sort of big warehouse. And I remember, I have a memory of like squad wiping a team there with a drum mag, because the gun was really good. But I don't think it lasted that long, or it wasn't actually used that long. Overall, it was like pretty forgettable. But that was, the more I'm thinking about it, I remember using that drum mag, and it was really, really good. But okay. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I don't know where to put this. Because it's like, sure, it was probably broken, but I really don't remember it. Like, this is one of those guns that I almost just don't even want to put on the rank at all, because it's like, I don't know.
Let's add a row. Let's do a little row below miserable, and we're going to name this forgot or forgettable. I named mine forgettable, and it's going there, because you're right. I barely remember it. I barely remember this being... I remember the gun, obviously. I used it in multiplayer occasionally, but in Warzone, I don't remember it.
Yeah, so. I'm sure there are some people molding about like how broken it was, but again, it all depends when you were playing the most, what guns you were using. Like this could have been one of those things where it was really broken for a week or two, but we didn't personally use it that much or something.
So that's going in the forgettable category for me. So next gun is not a gun at all, and also it is not forgettable. It is the rocket propelled grenade launcher, also known commonly as the RPG, the Taliban Special. Unfortunately, this was actually a meta. Even though it's a launcher and it's a secondary, you might think, surely it wasn't that broken. It can't be. It can't have been like a meta. You'd be wrong. You'd be wrong. It was insane and really strong. And something you guys may have forgotten about since we've been spoiled with MDub 3. I think this started in MDub 2 actually, is back in the day when you had a loadout, when you got your loadout, if you wanted to run an assault rifle and an SMG, you had to have overkill, a red perk, which was like the best perk slot at the time. And what people would do is they would have two loadouts. So the strat was you loot up, get enough money to buy a loadout. It was only 10K and it was always 10K. And then you get your overkill class for your two primary guns. And then when the free loadout drops, you go hit that and you pick up your second loadout, which had an SMG as its primary, and then all the perks you want. So instead of overkill, you would have ghost on this class. And then you'd pick up that class, and then your old guns would drop on the floor. So you'd swap from your SMG to your pistol. Didn't matter what it was. You'd usually take fully loaded on it so you can get more ammo. And then you would swap your pistol for the primary you just dropped from your first class, and then you'd have two guns and ghost. And the RPG had a couple of unique benefits, one of which was you could get ghost off rip. So as soon as you got 10K, you get your loadout, boom. Since you're not running an SMG, you're running a rocket launcher, which is a secondary weapon. you don't have to run overkill. So that was one of the like nice things about these metas we had every once in a while back when overkill was required, where a secondary weapon was really good, is that everyone would just get like ghost off rip if they were using it. So like that was one of the things with the RPG that made it kind of attractive. But obviously the most attractive thing about it was how it just did too much damage. It did too much damage and it had way too big of a splash radius. And also keep in mind, in MW19 Verdansk, vehicles were way more common than they are now, or have been since. Vehicles were most often used on Verdansk. And every game, every map, I should say, after that, got away from vehicles. They disincentivized using vehicles a lot more after Verdansk. Because the next map was Caldera, where the vehicles were worse. They were slower, they were less maneuverable, they had no torque, so couldn't accelerate quickly at all. And also, you couldn't drive to many places in Caldera.
It didn't make sense, yeah.
Because the map was like a it was like the Korangal Valley. I mean just massive cliffs at a 40% incline. You couldn't drive up it, literally. It wouldn't work. Your car would just stall out. So in Verdansk though, everyone was using vehicles as well. And a lot of people were throwing trophies on their vehicles so that they could stop RPGs, but sometimes you don't have one. But that wasn't even the main reason people used this. The main reason was just did a lot of damage, too much. And it had a huge splash radius and it lasted entirely too long. And it was a real problem, It was a joke and it was incredibly annoying and not fun, especially if you had friends, many of you didn't, and you were fighting you were playing quads and 4 people were shooting RPGs at you. Not good, not fun, and bad. Not much counterplay, not much you can really do about it. You can hope you found a trophy, but like, okay, you're just going to stand in range of your trophy. That's an easy way to get killed. And trophies only deflect like 3 rockets before they blow up anyway. So it was just really trash, a really trash meta. And one of the things about it too is that, and I've talked about this a lot before, is this is the worst kind of overpowered gun or weapon, because even though it's overpowered, it's also not fun to use and it's completely not versatile at all. So I don't want to use it at all, but if someone else is using it, I'm kind of screwed in a lot of situations. So it was both really overpowered, but also not fun to use yourself. And that combination's not always there, like the DMR, which we'll get into. That was really overpowered too, but that was fun to use. RPG, not so. Not fun at all to use, but really overpowered. This was miserable, decidedly miserable. And it lasted way too long because this was an Infinity Ward game. I hated it, obviously.
That's interesting. I don't remember really the RPG being an issue for that long at all. Like, this is almost just forgettable to me. Like, I remember
Interesting.
I remember like it being used against vehicles, but like I don't even really, I believe you, but I don't remember it being too overpowered against people for that long or people running it for that long. Was this early on when the game launched or later?
It was very early. Yeah, it was very
early. Maybe that's
early.
What it was, like the first few weeks or month, basically.
That's another thing I'll say is that it was overpowered for a really long time, but people didn't catch on for a while. It's like when Warzone launched, it was overpowered, but no one knew it.
Yeah.
But then like whatever, 6 weeks after launch, it hit like a critical mass, or probably JGod made a video about how good they are or something. And then all of a sudden everyone was using it. And then it was still overpowered for another like month after that. And then they eventually nerfed it. And I remember we celebrated a lot when we were reading those patch notes.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, I distinctly remember a us being in Storage Town
Mm-hmm.
and just getting destroyed. Because like we went into one of the garages or whatever, and it was just over. Like they were just shooting rockets, and not have to be in our line of sight, so we couldn't shoot them back. And they just kept shooting them, and we kept plating. And we were like, dude, are they gonna run out? They didn't. We all died.
Oh, dude, know what it was fun against? Was helicopters. That was fun against helicopters because you could squad wipe a whole team with them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching a random YouTube video. This was uploaded March 17th, and this guy's using an M4 and an RPG. So yeah, that was very early on.
Very early, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, you're right. A meta like that's never fun, but I don't like remember it enough to hate it, so I'm just gonna like throw it in D tier because yeah, those metas are never fun. It's one of those where it's really fun to use, but then it's awful to go up against, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So, all right, moving on. For those of you who've been listening for a while, you already know where this is going. This is an assault rifle, another DLC assault rifle from MW19. I have the fondest of memories of this gun. It was a decidedly K-BAM only gun, I dare say. And it's my second favorite FPS gun of all time. And it is the Ram 7 from MW 2019. The most fun gun I've ever had the pleasure of using. It was a treat. It was fantastic. It was perfect. It was balanced also. But it was still very strong and very good. It was competing against, if I recall correctly, the AMAX and the Kilo.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Kilo was still pre-nerf at this time. So people were using those three guns a lot. But most people were not using the Ram 7 because it recoiled. It had a lot of horizontal recoil. It would pull left a lot. And that is just harder to control on a controller than it is on a mouse. It's actually pretty easy with how predictable and steady the recoil was to control that horizontal drift it had. At least for me. Tfue popularized this gun. When Tfue streamed a lot of Warzone, he was the most popular Ram 7 user on Earth, I would imagine. He would drive around, downtown with a Ram 7. He would just drive around, wait to see some glint. He would hop out. He would mount his own hood.
Yeah.
And just delete people. It was high fire rate, great velocity, really good multipliers. I think that's what made it really good, is that it had like a way better like limb multiplier than the AMAX or the, what's it called? Kilo did. I think that was I don't remember for sure, but that was like, I think what made it really good. And you could use it with iron sights. It had great irons, or you could use it with a VLK. Both were fine. And because it wasn't overpowered, it was meta for a long time. And because not that many people used it, because it was like a K-BAM only gun, basically. It was also meta for a long time. So it had a lot of staying power if you did like it. This was my favorite meta of all time in Warzone. It was so fun. And it wasn't like stronger than a Kilo or an AMAX. It was just different. It was kind of like the middle ground between those two, in my opinion.
I think the Ram was a lot better at close to medium range. I think its actual time to kill was a lot faster than both of those guns. But the downside was it was not nearly as good at long range because of the recoil, and then it probably just had a more substantial damage drop off or something. But I remember liking it more for like close to medium range because the fire rate. But I never liked it at long range at all. You had to mount pretty much. So if you were like caught in the open, you would miss a lot of shots at 100-meter engagements or something. Especially when so many people sniped back then, that made the gun not good at long range if you can't rip somebody off a heady. Whereas like it feels like with the Growl or even the AMAX, which had a lot of recoil, but it hit a lot harder. You didn't have to hit as many shots. Feels like those guns to me were a lot easier to, kill snipers with.
I agree.
So yeah, I like the
AMAX
RAM.
had more recoil, but it was just like up. It was easier to control, I think, for like heady ripping. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think RAM's going A. I didn't use it that much at all. I'd never really loved it like you did. It would either be like a high B or an A for me, but I'll just throw it in A.
Yeah. That's fair. Most people didn't. So yeah, there you go. That's S tier for me, obviously. Next, MP7. So this was like, I don't think anyone really used this unless they were sniping. I think this was pretty decidedly like a sniper support gun.
I think some hipfire builds too, right? Because people would do like no stock, and instead of the 60 round mag, they do one of the smaller mags, and it would zoom, and it had good hipfire. I thought
maybe
it had nice
I don't
irons
remember that
too.
as much, but yeah, it had really good irons, very little recoil, really fast handling, and a really high fire rate. So that made it a really good sniper support gun, because even though the damage drop off at like 30 meters was substantial, you're also hitting every shot easily with irons, because the irons were also really good. And it had a really fast fire rate. So the time to kill was like slower than an AR, but not that much slower. It was definitely usable at those ranges. But you weren't sacrificing like up close gunfights, because it handled so quickly that you wouldn't just get dominated by like an MP5 necessarily if you were in like a heads up fight. You'd be disadvantaged, but you wouldn't be like screwed, you know? And it was also just a really fun gun to use.
I think it had really good velocity. I think a lot of the SMGs did back then, because I think a lot of people would run the long barrel as well. So like with an SMG, I don't remember what it was, but I'm pretty sure the velocity was like higher than 1,000. Whereas like now our velocity is like 500 on SMGs, because it didn't feel like an SMG at all. You could literally use it at AR ranges and compete. Like 60, 80 meters, you easily kill people with it.
Yeah.
That thing was insane.
It was really good, and it was really fun. I quite enjoyed it. I wouldn't say S tier, but I would say A tier. Great gun and a good meta. And again, not overpowered, in my opinion. I think it was like pretty balanced and very good for what it could do.
Yeah. According to this random build I found online, I wish Sim had all the old Warzone stats still on there up until a week ago when they added the new Warzone, unfortunately, because I was going to look and see what the actual build would be. But it was around 650 without a long barrel. So with the long barrel, I'm guessing you're like around 800. It felt really good though. I swear back then also, like maybe the hit reg was just a lot better in Warzone 1, because that thing felt like a beam at all ranges. Like it was crazy good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, MP7 for me would go A tier as well. Yeah, that's going in A tier. The issue with doing a gun tier list, unlike the POI tier list, is that the guns we picked were all either popular or like generally good, you know? So it's like we're going to have a lot of guns that are at the top of the list, because we're not doing every gun in the game like we did every POI in the game. Because for like for the POI tier list, we had what? Like 4 POIs in S tier or something like that.
Yeah,
it's going to be very top heavy.
Yeah, which is fine. And some of them won't go in the top, trust me. But anyways, we'll get into that. Next, the Bruin Mark 9. So this was the first like meta LMG ever, and that I remember, and it was only that way because it had a 60 round mag attachment, like that side loaded. You guys can see it today. Like the side loaded kind of canted 60 round mag that you would see in like an M4 60 rounder. That made its handling way better. And then it also had that LMG stat line in terms of velocity, which didn't matter that much because they all guns had good velocity, like Tanner just said. But also damage range, which is why it was, I think, really good. Is it had like LMG damage ranges, and it handled like an AR, and it reloaded as quickly as an AR too. All you had to do was have that mag attachment. So the downside was you'd have to, well, there wasn't really a downside actually, because you'd be running a mag attachment anyway. So it was just really good. It was pretty fun. It was kind of slow. You moved slowly. ADS a little slower, but not much slower from what I recall. It was a solid meta, but I don't think it was actually that interesting. I think it was just kind of like fine. I would say this goes in the B tier for me.
This was the one that became very popular for a long time, right? And this is all every single person in the lobby ran, and it was really good.
Yes.
I think this was
sure.
okay. This was a meta I never got behind personally. This is one of those. So everybody else ran it, but for some reason I didn't. Was this a DLC gun? Do you remember?
Yes.
That's probably why. This is one of those guns that I didn't even want to bother leveling or anything, and I didn't find it enjoyable to use, so I didn't. So for me, this is just going in C tier because everybody in the lobby was using it, and it was pretty good, but I just, I never got into it, so it's like, whatever, it's fine. It was a good gun, though, for sure.
Yeah, it was solid. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was that interesting either. Next is the R9O shotgun, the Dragon's Breath. The doof, as kids would cringely call it.
Don't say that ever. I hate that. Don't say that.
Yeah, I didn't like it either, but just had to remind everyone. Had to inflict that memory on everyone else. Yeah, this gun was insane. It would two-tap everyone in
really far
fire from entirely too far, like literally 20 meters. People would use Dragon's Breath on it. If you can hip fire to tap someone, it's obviously broken. This is one of those guns that was broken, overpowered, and also not particularly fun to use, in my opinion. And it felt really cheesy to die to. And like even EOD wouldn't save you. And it was also overpowered for a long time. I remember people complaining about it for weeks before it got nerfed. I wouldn't say this was miserable. I would say it's D tier though. It was pretty bad.
Again, I had fun with it, but it's not fun to go against.
Like an RPG.
Yeah.
So.
I think one of my clips from our Goodbye Warzone 1 video that we did was me using the R9, if I'm not mistaken. I remember, I think I got like 3 or 4 kills on some guys, and they were all pissed, and every single one was like a 2-tap, basically. And because it fired 2, and then you had to rack it, so those 2 would come out very fast. And I remember my first kill was a guy that was fully plated, and it was probably 15, 20 meters away, and you like 2-tap him. So it was fun when I used it, and not fun to die against. It's going in D tier.
Exactly. Yeah. So next we have a lot of people's favorite gun.
L.
The Kilo 141.
The training wheel gun. The training wheel assault rifle.
Yeah. This gun was really good, not because it did a lot of damage, but because it did not have any recoil, and it did enough damage. And again, like Tanner said, remember, snipers are really good in Warzone 1. And a good way to compete with a sniper is to never miss any bullets and cause them to flinch so they can't headshot you. So the Kilo was great for that reason as well. You could easily shoot at snipers on rooftops and cause them to flinch and miss you and then get a down or whatever. But even outside of that, I mean, you could just shoot people really far away, really easily, without missing very much. This was the first, like, truly no recoil gun that we had. And that also made the game pretty annoying to, like, rotate. Like, if you didn't have a vehicle, it was really tough to rotate because no one was running smokes. Everyone, I think, was running stims for a very long time. So if you wanted to like get into zone through the open and there's a team holding you with kilos, like they're not gonna miss bullets. So
Yeah.
okay. And there's not much you can do about it. I mean, you can shoot them back.
Well, you had 4 seconds to react because the time to kill was so bad at long range. There was something you could do. You could just move.
Yeah, time to kill wasn't great, but before it got nerfed, it wasn't like terrible.
Yeah.
There was a reason it was so popular. It was really good. This was just mid, in my opinion. I never used it. I found it super boring to use. And the time to kill was not nearly as good as like, yeah, the Growl, the Ram, the
Jesus
AMAX.
Christ.
I don't know what just happened,
Yeah.
etc. So, this is a C tier.
I remember at one point when they nerfed it, we were going over it when we were telling everybody to stop using it and everyone would get mad at it. If I'm not mistaken, at long ranges, like 60 plus meters, the Kilo literally killed at like 1800 milliseconds. Do you remember that? When it was nerfed, it was killing 400 to 500 milliseconds slower, and so many people still ran it. And we were like, go ahead, run the Kilo. I'm gunning you 100 out of 100 times at that range if you're going to use the Kilo. It's a terrible gun after the nerf. It's horrendous. But if you want to run it, okay, great, you're making my lobby easier. But yeah, this gun was always extremely overrated in my opinion. Boring, wasn't interesting to use, didn't sound interesting, didn't look interesting, didn't handle interesting. I didn't enjoy the fire rate very much. Just one of those guns that never felt that good to me ever. I would also put it in C tier, yeah. And that's where people are going to start getting mad at us. And if you're getting mad, just remember this was the training wheel gun. This was the baby gun. This was the burger bot gun. So L.
Yeah, it was just, it wasn't overpowered. I think it was like pretty appropriately balanced, but it was really boring to use and really boring to fight against.
Yeah.
So like, it just didn't, it was just uninteresting. So, yeah, there you go. Moving on to one of the most overpowered guns we've ever had in Warzone history, the Car 98K, the good old car. And this thing was nuts, and really good, and too good. It was, so remember, in Warzone 1, every sniper was a one-hit kill at any range if you hit a headshot on someone full-plated. So people were like, okay, cool. Let's look at all the snipers and marksman rifles or whatever. All the bolties, I should say. I don't remember the category names anymore. So let's look at all the bolties. Let's figure out which one aims down sight fastest. And let's use that. And because this was not in the sniper rifle category, it was in like the marksman rifle or whatever category. It also got aim assist, whereas like an HDR or something did not. So it's made it way more popular for that reason as well. It made it even easier to hit shots, along with the fact that you could build it to have no idle sway if you dropped the ADS stock and put on the idle sway stock instead. That was the only change you had to make, and then it wouldn't have idle sway either.
Yeah.
So even on KBAM, it was incredibly easy to hit headshots with this, and on controller. It was so good that people would like ban it from custom lobbies even. So it was absolutely too strong. But also, it wasn't overpowered in the same way that like the DMR was. Like it wasn't that crazy. You did still have to have some amount of skill to headshot someone who is not standing still. So there is that. It's not like it was totally brainless to use all the time anyway. And it was also really fun to use yourself. But it didn't have a box mag either. You had to top load it one round at a time. That was annoying. But overall, it was really strong, but also pretty fun to use. I don't know where I used it a lot, but I also got annoyed when I got headshotted to it. So I I don't know where I put this. It's I think it's going in low A for me.
Yeah. So the Kar 98 was actually a marksman rifle, wasn't it? Wasn't it considered a marksman rifle? Which is what made a lot of people mad. Okay, that's what it was. Oh yeah, so was the SPR. Okay. Yeah, this is usually everyone's favorite sniper rifle, so you'd think I'd put it in S tier, but there's a sniper that I like more that has to go in S tier instead, which we'll get to at some point. I mean, for me, a lot of my clips and memories are using the Kar 98 for sure. And it's interesting too, because like back then we really didn't think it was overpowered. Like everybody just used one-shot snipers.
Toward the end we did. Toward the end, I think we did.
I don't think it was really until Caldera people started feeling that way. Yeah, when Caldera launched. And it's probably because the sight lines were so long, so like 300 meters away, if you were one-tapping somebody, people were getting mad at that. But on Verdansk, you often weren't hitting long-range shots like that anyways. Plus, yeah, it was just so satisfying, like running through downtown, getting shot by somebody, jumping, turning around, looking at a guy 200 meters away on a head glitch and ripping him off that. Like, that felt so good to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Kar 98, it's going an A for me as well. Only thing I didn't like about it is that you got sticky, icky aim assist with it, which you shouldn't have been getting that strong of aim assist, whereas like something with the Swiss, you basically got 0 aim assist because it was a sniper rifle. So that's also why the Kar 98 was preferred by most people, and especially controller players. And I remember us talking about that in Warzone 1 too. We're like, if you're on controller, definitely use the Kar 98 over the Swiss. Because I always talked about how I like the Swiss better. So yeah, that one's Kar 98's going in A for me.
Yep.
Really fun meta for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Next we have Cali sticks.
Miserable.
I mean, miserable. Yeah. Nothing worse.
One of the worst metas of all time.
I'd rather die to an RPG, unironically. You moved faster than if you had a knife. And also, if you got hit once, your character would flinch and look at like the 7th circle of hell. So you couldn't, once you got hit once, you were dead. You couldn't land shots anymore. And then you'd be downed. Really unfun, bad, not good meta. Take melee weapons out of FPS games. It's obviously miserable.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Next, the AS Val. So this is an interesting one because many of you probably don't remember it because it was meta, but it was really only meta in solos and maybe duos because this gun killed faster than every AR we've mentioned or will mention. Like, it killed really incredibly quickly at any range, but the biggest mag it could have was only 30 rounds. So that was one big downside. And uniquely for Verdansk especially, well, whatever. It had a lot of recoil. So even if you didn't care about only having 30 rounds, you actually couldn't land shots reliably at like long range at all.
It was a secondary, yeah. It was an SMG.
Basically, yeah. So like you could use this in solos and get up close to people and win every gunfight because your time to kill is faster. But again, you only had 30 rounds, so couldn't really get away with it in quads. And even on big map, I never ran it as a primary, or very sparingly I did, because it had just too much recoil to land shots far away. So like on paper, the time to kill at 80 meters was like 3 times as fast as a kilo, but in practice it wasn't. You would have a slower time to kill. You would miss that many bullets, no matter what attachments you put on it. It had a lot of recoil. That was like another balancing mechanism. So the only way to hit a lot of shots reliably was to be fairly close. And then it was really disgusting and good. So that also made this gun viable on Rebirth Island when that came out. And that is where I used this gun a fair amount. When we would play Resurgence, I would like running a Val because it was a very unique gun and it was very, again, competitive up close. Like you would not lose gunfights as long as you didn't get super surprised by someone with like an SMG. So it was solid. I enjoyed it. It was very niche. And you never saw it that much unless you played solos a lot, I guess, maybe. But like I never saw it that much because I have friends. So I would say this is B tier only for how little I used it myself and saw it used by other people. If I used it more, I'd probably actually move it to A tier. But because I didn't encounter it too much and it was such a narrow use case, it's going in B.
Yeah, it was so good and so fun and nobody used it. And it's that gun where within 10, 15 meters, you don't lose a gunfight to any other gun. Other gun. But yeah, by the time you get pretty much 2 kills, 2 downs, you have to reload. It did have a very fast reload, but still, you often just couldn't get around that. So for me, man, yeah, I do want to put it in A, or even like it was so fun it could even go in S, but because of that mag size and how little we were actually able to use it reliably, yeah, I think it's got to go in B tier. But one of the most fun, probably in my opinion, the most slept on gun maybe ever in Warzone. That was a meta gun, but people just didn't use it because the mag size, and a lot of people just actually didn't know about it. Like, I don't remember ever dying to it in Warzone. People did not use it. You know, maybe if you played like strictly solos or duos, you probably saw it more often. But trios and quads, no, you would never see this thing ever. But it was so much fun to use. I actually feel sorry for you if you didn't get to use it because that sucker slapped, dude. Man, that was good.
It was fun.
Yep.
It was an interesting, like, unique gun. I like guns like that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
By the way, hold on. Quick little aside here. This is gonna have to be a 2 episode.
Oh, this is a 2-parter.
This is so we're gonna need to at some point figure out where we're stopping because we're already at an hour and we haven't even finished the first game's guns. So
yeah, we'll maybe go through this and Cold War, and then do a part 2 episode sometime.
Yeah,
I think that'll be the play. We'll see. But anyway, moving on to the next gun. We got 4 more for MW19. The MP5, baby. Woo!
Oh wow.
This is actually the first second SMG on the list.
I'm gonna get water.
But unlike the MP7, this was the SMG that people would use with an AR primarily. I would also say, at least to my memory, no other gun was as dominant for as long in Warzone history as the MP5 was. I feel like this thing was the best SMG for like 9 months. I probably wasn't that long, but it felt like forever that this was just the gun to use. From Warzone launch until like the integration. It was just so good at pretty much everything. The only real downside it had was that the reload was fairly slow. Besides that, it did not really have a weakness. It had a good time to kill. It had good multipliers. It had good ADS time. It had good enough irons. It had good sprint to fire time. It had insane hip fire accuracy, even if you didn't build it that way. So much so that people would just build it like normally and they would just hip fire everything anyway. And then also if you did ADS, it was quite accurate as well. The fire rate was a little slow. I don't know if I'd say slow. It was like average fire rate. So maybe that's another slight downside, but that also made the mag last a while. So if you were running like the 50 dumper on that, you could get a lot of kills in that mag. it was also quite fun to use, but it was absolutely overpowered. Mainly because it was kind of like the HRM that we have now, except it hip fired way better. That, like, not in terms of how it feels, but in terms of how good it is. It's just like good at everything. It was really, really strong, and it was fun to use, but it did get boring because of how long it was like meta for. So
it was a viable SMG for like an entire year.
Actually, yeah, it was probably.
But back then, I don't
think
we cared about that. I think that's why everyone ran it the whole time. Like nobody complained it was still meta or anything.
Yeah, because it didn't like delete you like later SMGs would, like an OTS-9 or something. So yeah, people didn't really complain about it too much. So for me, this is, I'm putting it in B tier. It was really good, but I think it overstayed its welcome. I would have liked some more variety the entire year. But it wasn't bad. It wasn't like unfun or anything.
The other interesting thing is it had
really
10 mil ammo as well. So you could run regular 9mm ammo, which had a higher fire rate. It did, I think, less damage but lower recoil, and so it was a lot better at range. And then a lot of people ran the 10 mil, which I personally never liked. But that also came in... Did that come in a 50-round mag as well? I'm trying to think if it did. But a lot of people like that. It a little bit more recoil, slower fire rate. But I think it was better up close if you hit your shots. But yeah, I never really preferred it. But
I think most people did not run that, but some people did. I don't remember too much.
It was fairly popular. I remember seeing it a lot, but I just know I didn't personally use it. And I think it's because the lower fire rate and recoil. Yeah, MP5. We used it for so long, but I don't know. There's just other SMGs that I ended up liking way more.
Yeah.
So I would say B as well. Yeah, I was originally thinking A, but kind of looking through the list of other SMGs that are coming up, I like so many of them way more than that. But yeah.
Yeah. All right, so moving on to another AR. This was a great gun, and I really liked this as well. The CR56 AMAX. This was another DLC gun. It was an early DLC gun, and it was the first, like, in my opinion, it was the first meta gun we had that had a pretty high skill gap, where it was not just plug and play, and whether or not it was going to be better than a Grau or a Kilo for you depended on how well you could control the recoil and how often you could hit shots. So it killed faster than those guns if you hit all your shots, but it also had more recoil. But it didn't have so much recoil that it was unusable at long range. It was absolutely usable. You just had to have some skill to do it. And that puts it in a special place in my heart. Really good gun where you would be rewarded for being a skilled player for using it. That was really cool to see. I really enjoyed that meta. And I think it was probably a little overpowered at times, but not too overpowered. Because again, fast time to kill, but not as easy to hit all your shots with as a Kilo was. So I quite enjoyed that. I liked the trade-off it offered for that reason. Skill gap gun. This is an S tier gun for me. This was an S tier meta. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, AMAX was a fun one. So that came out in Season 4 of Modern Warfare 2019. So yeah, that was like late summer in 2020. And this was a popular one. I used it a lot. Yeah, it was. You are right in that it had a little bit higher of a skill gap, maybe because of like the recoil and the slower fire rate. But I know the actual time to kill at long ranges was too fast for a long time. That was one of those guns where if you're running in the open, you're just torched because its time to kill was so good. I feel like it also had a really good headshot multiplier or something, if I remember correctly.
I'm pretty
But
sure.
yeah,
It did,
AMAX for me is gonna go in A tier. I like the AMAX more than like the Ram 7, but it wasn't an S tier gun for me personally.
That's fair. Yeah. I like the philosophy behind it, and using it was fun. But anyway, let's move on. All right, 2 more guns. We got our next sniper. This is a proper sniper rifle. The It's Iron Special, the It's_Iron Special. The HDR, along with the M4, this was the first ever meta gun in Warzone. Right when Warzone launched, if you liked not sniping, you used an M4. If you liked sniping, you used an HDR. It was the slowest handling sniper, for those of you who don't remember. It also had, by virtue of that, the best bullet velocity and almost certainly the best damage outside of headshots of every gun as well. Although that wasn't super relevant, it was fairly relevant. But mainly what the reason people used it was for that velocity. And also its default optic zoomed a lot as well. So that also made it very good for camping. So you could get on top prison and you could just kill whole teams if you were good enough at farmlands. Farmlands from prison. I watched Iron do it many times.
You can shoot people off the roofs at port, yeah.
Yeah. And this was the gun that gave us a bunch of very cool clips of like literal 800-meter one taps out of helicopters on people, like super lucky shots like that. It was balanced, I would say, unlike the car, because it ADS'd slowly, it rechambered slowly, you moved slowly, it had a lot of flinch, so if people were shooting at you, you're not hitting a headshot, unlike the car. And it fulfilled its role perfectly, in my opinion, and it was quite balanced. And I enjoyed using it as well. This was a gun I used early on. As I started sniping more, I ended up getting away from it. Because new snipers came out, like the SPR, and then I would start using the car more as well. Mainly the SPR, I think, is what I went to. And then also, what was that other one? No one really used it, but it doesn't matter. Whatever.
I don't know.
The second beefiest sniper in MW19. I forget what it's called.
Oh yeah, it was.
No one ever really used it.
AX50. No, that was popular at 1.2 for a while. I don't know why.
Some people used it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
HDR, you're forgetting one of the biggest things with the HDR is that original meta was the thermal meta. People quickly discovered how good thermals were in MW19, and your character, I mean, everything would be dark gray when you ADS'd, and any enemy in your reticle would be bright white, running through like bushes and everything. It was crazy good. So I don't remember what exactly happened with that. I think they did end up nerfing the thermal probably, but it was also everybody started running cold-blooded very quickly, so then nobody was lighting up on thermal anymore, so then that went away. So knowing Infinity War, they actually didn't nerf the thermal. It's just everyone started running cold-blooded, so then everyone got off the thermal HDR and swapped to another gun, and then everyone just went back to not using cold-blooded, and then people never went back to the HDR. But yeah, I mean,
it was also an attachment slot to run a thermal.
Yeah,
so
true.
A lot of people would rather just use the default optic to get a little more ADS speed or something.
Respect to the HDR for being like literally like one of the first sniper meta for sure, but it's I would say it's C tier, C or D tier for me.
Yeah, I didn't rank mine yet. That's interesting. I enjoyed using it. I liked every once in a while, hunkering down and just shooting at people really far away.
Yeah.
And getting those really long range headshots was really fun. You know, didn't happen often for me, especially this early on. This is the first time I was ever like sniping. I don't know if you guys are, most of you probably didn't even listen at the time, but I remember I like started sniping only for like a couple months to like get used to it. And then eventually I figured I should turn my ADS high zoom sense down to 0.7, and that blew the whole thing wide open for me.
Yeah.
And then sniping was starting to click and it was really fun. But like this was like after I was using the HDR. So with that said, I will put it in, man, I'll put it in B tier. It's like a low B for me. Yeah. It was a sniper, but I mean, it was a sniper. It was just a sniper. Like it wasn't that interesting. I don't know. So, but it was good.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah, it's in C for me. I if anything, I remember going back to it more in Caldera after they made the sniper changes. Because if I'm not mistaken, the HDR was still one of the guns that would one-shot headshot at any range, right? Yeah, so I remember I preferred that over like all of the Vanguard snipers that could do that. So I used the HDR there a little bit, if anything. But yeah, it's still going in C tier for me. It wasn't like, it was a good gun, but it wasn't like super fun to use or anything because it was a slow, heavy, chunky sniper.
Yeah, totally fair. And then last, and not quite least, because there were Cali sticks. Is the Psychovs. So the Psychov was a late stage Verdansk DLC gun. It was a pistol, but it was a fully automatic pistol. And also, you could get it akimbo. You could get akimbo as one of the attachments, the rear grips. And it was really broken, insanely broken. This also was the genesis of one of my favorite Warzone memories of all time. Was I was using the akimbo Psychovs because they were grossly overpowered. And I was in that hangar that is across the train tracks that had the buy station inside of it, by Boneyard.
Oh,
I don't know what cardinal direction that was. I believe it's east of Boneyard. You cross the train tracks. There's like that concrete wall, and then there's like that hangar. It's like made of like sheet metal, and there's a buy station inside that, nestled in the corner.
Oh, I think I know what you're like, kind of by like the pool or something like that, where that building with the roof on it, kind of like south of that cord.
South of that.
Okay,
yes.
yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah. So I'm in there. We're playing whatever quads probably. I remember this so distinctly because I had 2 plates. I was not fully plated. And some guy was pushing me who was fully plated. And he naively was not using akimbo Psychovs. He was using any other gun. He was full health. I was not full health. He comes around the corner because he knows I'm in there chasing me. He gets, I think, first shots also when he comes in the hangar as well. So I have no business winning this gunfight, but I do anyway because these guns are that broken at this time. This is before they were nerfed at all. So the movement speed was not nerfed, the damage range, whatever. So he comes in, starts getting shots on. I just dump him. And again, no reason I should have won that gunfight. I didn't deserve it, but I killed him. I probably got like 2 lucky headshots or something, and he just got evaporated.
Yeah.
And I got the best death comm I've ever gotten in Warzone, where the guy very clearly, not an act, fucking screams, "Nerf them already!" And he's like still shouting, and the comm ends because you don't get comms for like more than a second or whatever. But he screams, and this is in the evening. And this guy is an American, obviously.
God bless
I can tell
America.
from his accent. So I'm picturing some kid, some guy. He actually wasn't a kid. He was like in his 20s, our age probably. It sounded like sitting at his desk at like whatever 9 o'clock at night, screaming at the top of his lungs at a video game. Nerfed them already.
Yeah.
At the top of his lungs.
Bro did a scream.
I thought it was so freaking funny. I was laughing so hard. One of the best death comms I've ever gotten. I was really upset because I wasn't streaming at the time, so I don't have a clip of it saved or something. I really wish I did. And those were brought to me by the Psychovs. However, were they a good meta? No. But unlike a lot of the really overpowered guns we had in MW19, I think by this time Raven had taken over development. Because again, like I said, these were added pretty late, if memory serves.
This was added. Do you remember how MW19 got content after Cold War came out? This was one of those guns. So this came out in season 2 of Cold War, but it was an MW19 gun. And I remember them not lasting very long at all. Yeah.
Exactly. So
like I remember one area in downtown constantly fighting with them and everybody had them. I want to say maybe I actually just stopped playing when they were meta because they're essentially forgettable to me, but I do remember like the few instances of them. I mean, grossly overpowered. One of the most overpowered metas we've ever had. So they're obviously miserable. They're in there in the miserable category for sure.
Yeah.
I personally hardly used them though.
Yeah, I used them a lot because by this time, this was late enough into my Warzone journey where I realized how good hip firing is in general. So I was like on my hip fire kick, which I'm still on to this day, by the way. So they were like fun for me because they're akimbo, so you have to hip fire them. But they were entirely too overpowered. But yeah, these were added so late that by this time Raven was in charge. And Raven's an actual development studio, unlike Infinity Ward, so they did not last long. They got nerfed, I think, inside of a week, actually. Maybe 2 weeks, but they were not overpowered for very long at all. And the way they balanced them, I'm almost positive, is that they had the movement speed. You would move like 70% slower with them. So then they just became like unusable.
Yeah, that's what it was.
They did other things too, but the big, most noticeable thing was the movement speed. You went from moving at a normal SMG speed to like slower than any LMG in the game movement speed. Like it was really, really slow.
Yeah.
Which was probably, and they did other things to it also. But anyway, yeah, they were really overpowered. Didn't last long. Fun while they lasted. If they lasted much longer, this would go much lower in my list, but since they didn't last very long, I would say these are actually low C tier for me.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. Yeah,
because I was also using them, unlike you. So like Cali sticks in RPGs, I'm never using those. I'm not doing it. They're too unfun to use. So when I died to them, it was just hopeless. I had no chance of winning the fight, and that made it miserable for me. But I'm willing to use some Psychovs. So even though they were overpowered, I also had them things out. So it wasn't like as traumatizing to me. So yeah, I'm putting them in C. But
yeah.
There you go. And that wraps it for MW19. So yeah, if we forgot a gun, sorry. I don't think we did.
M13.
M13. That was like a resurgence meta.
That was the K-Bam Super Sweat meta, so it kind of could have been interesting, but like ultimately it wasn't that good. It was just one of those guns that was fun because it was snappy. It had a high fire rate. You got a lot of hit markers, so it like kind of felt satisfying in that way because the high fire rate and the hit markers, but it really wasn't that good. But it was a fun little gun to mess around with.
Yeah, so we're going to add another segment to this episode called Honorable Mentions. When we finish a game, we're going to list some honorable mentions if we remember them that are not on this list because I forgot to add them to the tier list when I was creating it. Honorable mention M13, that is a good one. It was like a resurgence kind of meta. And then the SPR. I would also give an honorable mention.
SPR, that would have been a good one, but it's ultimately it was just like a bolt action sniper that just wasn't even as good as the car or Swiss. So it was fun to use something different though.
A lot before the Swiss.
It was before the Swiss, yeah.
Yeah. So if you were annoyed with top loading a Car 98, you would use an SPR. That was like why I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
And also for those of you who don't remember, when the SPR came out, it was bugged to be literally hit scan. It had like infinite bullet velocity. So that made it very easy to hit shots. Because as long as your dot was on the guy, no matter how far he was, if you clicked while your dot was on him, you did damage. It was literally hit scan. But even after they nerfed it, it had very good velocity and it was fun to use. So that's another honorable mention. But
yeah.
Other than that,
Strela too would be an honorable one. Remember that? Remember people would use that to snipe people?
Mention. Yeah.
See, like I remember the Strela more than the RPG personally.
Because that was later. Yeah. People figured that out. Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, that was fun.
Because it had insane velocity and would one-tap direct impact.
That was probably Iron's build in HDR and Estrella, right?
It's possible, yeah.
HDR, Estrella, 15 recons, and easy dub.
Yeah, so I can't think of any other honorable mentions.
Yeah, no, I was looking through a list. That's all. That looks good, yeah.
Okay, so now we will move on to... what is this game? Cold War. And we will finish up with this for now. We'll do part 2 of the weapon meta tier list at another date. We will revisit this just like we did with maps. So, starting with, in Cold War, the XM4 assault rifle. My memory here is going to get a lot more fuzzy than it was with Verdansk, because I played like all of Verdansk. But toward the end of Cold War, we kind of checked out. So keep that in mind.
Interesting, because all these guns to me are way more memorable. I was going to even say that. I'm like, these guns to me, I can remember all of them so much more clearly compared to most of those MW19 guns.
I remember using them a ton. I just don't remember like when they released and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, I get that. Okay.
Yeah. So, but anyway, XM4 was a launch gun. This was in right away. It was, I mean, I guess it would be like an M4, right?
Yeah, it was the M4.
It's just like the M4 of Cold War. And when we got Cold War, the integration happened and all the guns were all terrible. So don't forget that. None of these guns were good right away when the integration happened, because the integration was not seamless. It was a disaster. So everything was terrible. And then eventually Raven decided to like really buff the long barrels and the muzzles a lot to get them to be on par stat wise with MW19 guns. And that is when people started using. And then they also changed how the axial worked.
And they changed mag sizes too at some point. A lot of these guns didn't have large mags in multiplayer, so they added bigger mags in Warzone, which is something I wish would come back, but none of that happens anymore. Yeah, that was interesting.
So yeah, just to kind of set the stage for all of you as a little reminder. But yeah, the XM4, it was high fire rate, not too much recoil, but it wasn't like an absolute laser beam or anything like a Kilo. It killed pretty fast. It was good, but it wasn't like insane or anything or overpowered, I don't think. It was pretty middle of the road for me in terms of like weapon metas we had. I don't know if this was ever like the dominant AR ever. Hard for me to remember exactly, but I do remember it was my primary AR for a while on Caldera, not on Verdansk.
Caldera, huh? Yeah, I remember using it on Caldera too.
So I don't know what happened with that exactly, but I think this was also a potential sniper support gun. I think that
this was an everything gun too. This was the best thing about the XM4, possibly one of the, I mean, it had so much utility. So people use this as an SMG build with iron sights. People would use this as a mid-range gun with a red dot, and people would use it as a long-range gun with the axial. So it had a lot of different uses. I loved this gun. One of my favorite Cold War guns for sure. Used it a lot. You're right, we did use it on Caldera quite a bit. I had forgotten about that, but then I thought about it. I'm like, oh yeah, I do remember using this a lot in Caldera early on. So XM4 for me, this is actually an A tier. Like this gun for me, I liked way more than even like the Ram 7, for example. Like this was a really fun gun. So many different types of builds for it. Because once we started getting to Cold War, this is where we started seeing build variety a lot.
Yeah.
And this was one of those guns. You could use it.
That's true.
It wasn't like the best at anything, but it was really, really good at 3 different things. And that was being a medium range gun, a close range gun, and a long range gun.
Yeah. I actually do remember using this as sniper support on Verdansk after they had made all those changes. I remember someone made like a video or something like, oh, its time to kill is actually really good. And its handling is pretty good if you build it in this particular way. Yeah, I'm remembering more now that you mention it. For me, this is a high B. High B tier.
Yeah. All right.
So... moving on to a very interesting one. This is going to be, I think, contentious. The Street Sweeper. So this was like the first full auto meta shotgun we ever had. It had 18 rounds in like a cylinder, and it had a fast fire rate. And again, it was full auto, and it had a decent enough damage range as well, to where you would kill people really fast. And it was particularly good in many of those Verdansk buildings where it's just the tiny little staircase that goes up and up and up and up and up. Like the promenade buildings, or even some of the buildings like south of airport, or south of airport, like those hangars, all those like little stairwells. It would just dominate. In all of those cases. And the big downside of the Street Sweeper, there were a couple. One of them was the movement speed was miserable. So if you're using like an AR with your Street Sweeper, you don't really have a good option for what gun to have out to just run around the map. You're either going to be moving at your AR primary speed, or probably even slower Street Sweeper speed. You couldn't like switch to your MP5 and move pretty quick. So that was a pretty big downside. And then also the biggest downside was the reload speed was awful. And you would load one shell at a time, and it was really, really slow. And if you were empty, it would take you, I'm not kidding, 30 seconds.
Well, yeah, because I think you put
18 shells.
I think you put a shell in, and then they would twist the mag, and then insert another shell, twist the mag.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, by the time that ammo is out, you should just like find another gun. Just pick up an SMG on the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like, as much as I would have loved to have used this gun a lot because it's a full auto shotgun that kills fast, I never did because the reload was too much. It was too much for me to handle. I couldn't do it. And yeah, like if you were out of bullets in that staircase and you're still in a gunfight, good luck. You don't have time to reload.
Yeah.
And if you can maybe get in like 3 shells, and then if those don't kill the next guy that pushes you, you're just dead. Yeah. Or you'd have to switch to your primary that probably has an axial or a VLK on it, and then you're massively disadvantaged. So this is another one of those guns where I imagine in like solos and duos, you would see way more because you have more time to reload between gunfights, engagements, and you use fewer bullets in those engagements. So I never liked it. And it was one of those guns where it's like, yeah, it's not fun for me to use because it reloads too slow, but if I see it, I'm dead. So
yeah, I mean, you could like squad wipe. Yeah. You could get a squad wipe at those 18 rounds, or you would just be out of ammo and then die in the middle of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that made it pretty like for me. So I'm putting this, I'm debating between C and D. I don't know where though.
Yeah, I'm going D.
I think it's D tier. Yeah. 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 Better than the R9 because it wasn't nearly as dominant, but not super fun. Yeah. So there you go. Next is a very interesting one, the nail gun. This is a DLC gun, and it had weapon levels, but it didn't have attachments. You couldn't do anything to it. It was literally a nail gun. It was a full auto SMG category weapon that you couldn't put attachments on. It had 25 rounds, 25 nails. And its time to kill was like really disgusting, but it had terrible bullet velocity, nail velocity, because they were technically like projectiles, and also not the best damage range, if I recall. But if you were inside your first damage range, it killed faster than all other SMGs at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I did not like this at all because it was really strong, but incredibly boring to use. It lacked versatility because of how bad the velocity was, and you couldn't put attachments on it. So it was like, and now we're in Cold War where there is some build variety, and that was part of the fun. That is still to this day part of the fun of playing Warzone. It's like, how do you want to like customize your, setup or whatever?
Yeah.
Couldn't do anything to a nail gun. It was just boring. Boring to use, boring to build since you couldn't build it. And you would get absolutely melted to it up close. Not very fun or exciting, but it did get balanced fairly quickly. Not in a week, but in like 2 or 3, if I remember correctly. So good enough time. This is another D tier for me.
Yeah. It's like a gun that I want to put it in forgettable, but it's not forgettable because I remembered it, but it's like I never used it. It was interesting in the sense that like, oh my God, we have a nail gun. That's like literally, it shoots nails. It doesn't shoot bullets. So like, it was kind of new and interesting because it had a really bad velocity. You couldn't mod it, but it was really good up close. Like if you had a Mac 10 or something and were going up against it, like you were going to lose that gunfight at 5 meters most of the time if that person hit their shots. But it didn't last that long. I didn't like using it. So I think I agree. I'm going to put it in D as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a meta of all time for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So back to versatile guns. Our next one here is the Milano 821. This was a unique gun, a unique little gun that a lot of people used for a lot of reasons. It was the long range SMG of the Cold War SMGs. It had an open bolt delay, which was weird. And it also had really good damage range and pretty fast handling, but also a pretty slow fire rate. And the time to kill up very close was like, okay. But there was even a time where the meta was to put, I never did this myself. It felt too weird, but there was a time with the Milano where people were putting axials on it and like sniping people with it. I don't know if you remember this, but it did not have much recoil at all. And people would run around. I distinctly remember dying to it and also watching Huskers for a while using that build, actually, an axial Milano. But even outside of that, this would be like a pretty good sniper support SMG because it had great damage range and was super easy to control. So very unique gun. Open bolt delay and slow fire rate made it kind of a miss for me most of the time. And I didn't use it too much, but a lot of people really liked it. This for me is like C tier. It's just perfectly mid. In my opinion, it was, even though it was like pretty unique, it wasn't quite good enough at anything for me to ever really want to use it.
That's
I don't remember. Anyway.
Kind of how I am. A lot of people used it for like those little axial builds. I never liked it for that. I never found that gun very fun. I didn't enjoy using it at all. I didn't enjoy even using it as like a close range SMG build or anything. It's D for me. I thought it was one of the very overrated guns.
Yeah, for sure. So, Speaking of unfun guns to use, the Krig 6.
Yeah.
This was like the Cold War Kilo, basically. Didn't have much recoil. Didn't kill very fast. For some reason, it was popular, but it was very boring to use. It was just super uninteresting also. It's like an AR with low recoil. I tried it. I remember trying it for a couple games and thinking like,
yeah, why?
I'd rather use whatever other guns there are that are good right now. Yeah. It's just, it wasn't good enough to me. But a lot of people used it. I do think it deserves to be in the tier list as a meta, because a lot of people liked that it was like another no recoil gun, whippy. But it was just super boring and frankly forgettable to me.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. There are way,
you know what? It is forgettable.
There are way too many full auto assault rifle type guns at that point to be using to ever use the Krig 6. It was the most typical AR, extremely forgettable. It was, again, I think kind of an overrated little meta along with the Milano.
Yeah.
Never enjoyed it. It was not a fun gun to use at all. It wasn't bad, just wasn't that good at anything, and it wasn't very fun for some reason.
Exactly. Yeah. So, now moving on to a very interesting and fun gun, the Swiss K31. So this was I don't know if this was in the sniper. It was in the sniper category.
Yes.
You're right. Yeah. It was a sniper. Fast handling, bolt action sniper, one shot at any range. ADS'd a little slower than the car, and also had a little more idle sway than a car, but it was pretty close, and it had a box mag, so you didn't have to top load rounds one at a time, which was a big advantage that this gun had that made me really enjoy it. And also, its velocity was better, if I remember correctly, than a car.
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember that for sure. I also pretty sure the default optic zoomed a lot more than the car, right?
Because the car was a default optic.
Was it an iron sight by default? Okay, yeah. Then the one that everybody used on the car did not zoom as much as the Swiss. I don't believe.
The max zoom you got was not much. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I don't know. So to me, Swiss is my favorite sniper in Warzone ever for sure. Probably. It's up there with my favorite guns ever. I mean, this is obviously going in S tier for me. But yeah, I guess like I said earlier, the only reason this wasn't completely meta over the Car 98 is because you got, I don't know, I didn't play on controller back then. And most of our friends at that point were all on K-BAM too. So I don't really remember if you got no aim assist or very, very little. But I for sure know the Car 98 had sticky, icky aim assist compared to the Swiss, because the Swiss was indeed a sniper. But for me, yeah, this gun was so fun. ADS really fast box mag reload. You didn't have to do the one round at a time like the car had. I mean, that alone, if everything else was identical, why would you not just use the Swiss, you know? You had the default optic on there, like you said. I'd forgot about that, so then you get another attachment for something. Yeah, just better for me personally in all ways than the Car 98. So I love this thing. To this day, my favorite sniper ever in Warzone, and probably will. It'll probably forever be my favorite sniper. Yeah, I loved that thing. So many clips using that. Quick scoping people, really fast ADS, good mobility, so much fun, man.
Yep. Absolutely my favorite sniper as well, and it's also an S tier for me, to be clear.
Swiss.
Because it was also balanced. Like, yeah, it wasn't like overpowered. It was just really good. And really fun to use. So, moving on, this is like one of the most disgusting metas we ever had. It was one of the most overpowered guns we've had in Warzone history, and it is the M16. So the M16, the Cold War M16 burst gun, it was completely terrible for a while. And I'm pretty sure once they made those suppressor changes, but before they made changes to the axial optic, that's when this all of a sudden became insane. And you could, I think, one tap people that are fully plated if you got 2 of your 3 shots of your burst. I think
you're right. Yeah.
To hit a headshot. So that wouldn't happen most of the time, but sometimes it would, and you would be frying when it did. I mean, the time to kill of one burst was really fast, way too fast, actually. So it was like really disgusting, overpowered, and especially when you were playing like quads or something. If you're getting team shot by M16s, they could be shooting your toe.
You're dead
in like one burst from each person. Yeah, even if like they all hit 2 bullets out of 3 anywhere on you, you're just dead. So it was like super giga disgusting, and because the axial was zooming like 8x and this thing didn't have that much recoil, you could be bursting people really far away with it really accurately as well. So it was really, really strong, and it was meta for a little too long also. A long time.
Yeah.
It was really good. And since it was burst fire, it was kind of refreshing. I think this was like the first good burst fire gun ever in Warzone. So it was kind of nice to do that. Like, oh,
yeah,
we have a burst fire gun that's strong. That's different. So I never loved it, but I didn't hate it. I would say for me, this is a B tier meta.
Yeah, it was interesting because a lot of people obviously hated it because it was so good, because the axial at that point, when this was meta, zoomed like a sniper scope essentially. For some of it. So you were getting a burst sniper rifle that didn't have recoils, especially when you mounted. Like that entire burst would hit at 200 meters in the same hole if you were mounted. And then it could be a 1 burst kill, but like for sure if you hit somebody anywhere on the body with 2 bursts, I mean they're 100% dead at that point.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people they would say, this is probably one of the most broken metas, but for me I absolutely loved it. It was one of the most fun broken metas, if not the most fun broken meta we ever had for a primary. So yeah, for me I'm going A tier with the M16. Just because of how fun those few weeks were with it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just when you died to it, it just felt so gross that I can't put it in A. But yeah, it was really fun to 1v people. It really satisfying. So
let's do the AUG next, since they were basically the same thing.
Yeah, let's do the AUGs. Yeah, so the AUG, I barely remember the difference. I think the AUG had less of a burst delay.
I think the AUG had more bullet spread. All I remember is that the M16 always felt a lot better, even though I think they had like similar time to kill when they were both broken with the axial. All I remember is that the M16 felt a lot better than the AUG. That's my main thing.
Yeah, I think it did. I think it had. From what I remember, they nerfed the M16, then everyone went to the AUG, and the AUG had less of a burst delay, but more like recoil. Yeah. I'm not sure about that. Don't hold me to it, but I think that was the difference. But besides that, they were basically overpowered for the same reason. Or the AUG was overpowered for the same reason. Really fast time to kill. I think it could 1 burst. And this was, again, pre-axial change. So when people were using that axial, yeah, it was like a burst sniper. So I'm putting this right next to the M16.
Interesting. I'm putting it lower only because I don't remember it as much, even though it was like essentially the same thing. And I just know I never liked it as much. So the AUG for me is going to go in C. It was similar enough, but I know I use the M16 only. I thought they were meta at like basically the same exact time. And like people would use either of them, but I don't know for sure. I remember using the M16 so much more, though. I have clips of using the M16.
Yeah. I don't know for sure, but anyway. Moving on to, man, one of my favorite SMGs ever, the Mac 10, the Mac Daddy. This was a fun little gun. Super zippy, super high fire rate as well. And it had like a 52 round mag, if I remember correctly. It had
Something around 50, yeah.
I think it was 52. I'm not positive, but that's what I thought it was. It was really fun. And this was one of those guns. Cold War had this weird thing where the gun in multiplayer would feel entirely different than it would in Warzone.
Yeah.
So like in multiplayer, the MAC-10 had a ton of recoil. In Warzone, it did not have a ton of recoil. Even if you used the same attachments in both games, they were different guns. But it was really fun, really broken. Not really broken, but pretty broken. It was too strong, but it wasn't actually like broken. I would argue it was in the meta a long time, and I also think this was one of those guns that got a ton of balance changes. And this is when Raven started, if memory serves, doing like small incremental balance changes rather than just nerfing something into the ground. And I think that's why the MAC-10 stayed relevant for so long, is because they like changed it a lot and it would stay meta because they wouldn't just gut it outright with a patch or whatever. Not positive on that, but I just remember it being really good for a very long time, even through balance changes to it. But it had great irons, high fire rate, great movement speed.
Great irons with that blueprint, the gallantry blueprint. Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
It had a 53 round mag that was, I forgot this too. We had fast mags back then. So that was you had the 53 round fast mag that you could use.
Oh yeah, dude.
There was a regular 53 and then a fast mag. And I don't remember the downsides. I don't know why you would ever use the regular mag over fast mag. I guess
I don't remember either.
I guess it hurt your ADS time more. It looks like it hurt your ADS by like an extra 10%.
Okay.
But maybe I didn't even use fast mags actually. I don't remember.
I forgot about that attachment, but you're right. Yeah, fast mags.
No, I didn't use the fast mag because I used the drum mag, which was not the fast mag. So I guess we thought the fast mag hit your ADS too much. Yeah, we for sure used the regular one because the fast mag was like a long stick, and I know we didn't use that.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, really fun. I also remember it had like a pretty big damage drop off, so you could still use it at like 30 meters and compete. But it wasn't like overpowered at that range from what I remember. So I really liked this. And this is absolutely going in A tier for me.
I remember it being better at range than a lot of the other SMGs. Like I feel like it was better at range than the MW19 MP5, the OTS9. It probably the only gun it like wasn't as good at range was probably the MP7. I think those were kind of somewhat comparable, is that they were both good at longer ranges. That's how I remember it at least, but it was good at everything. A lot of the SMGs were back then. Yeah, I'm going between S and A because it's one of my favorite subs, but then again, I look at the Vanguard category and I remember how fun some of those were, so man.
Yeah.
No, it is going S. I love the MAC-10. I used that for a long time. It's S tier.
Yeah, you're right. It is S tier, actually. It's low S tier.
I mean, as far as Verdansk goes, that for sure my favorite SMG during that era.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So there you go. Next is a great gun. A fantastic gun. I love this gun. Kind of like the XM4, it had some versatility as well.
Yep.
People would use this, not quite as versatile, because I don't think there were really SMG builds for it, but there were absolutely sniper support and primary builds for this. The Cold War AK-47. The best AK we've had since Warzone launched, in my opinion. It had like a slower fire rate, but not like too slow. It had fantastic irons, fantastic multipliers, good velocity, good damage range, just super satisfying and fun to use. And it was really good as sniper support or really good as a primary. boy, was this fun. One of my favorite ARs we've ever had in Warzone for sure.
Yeah.
And probably a little too strong most of the time, but not so strong that it like ruined the game or anything. And it had some recoil, so there was some skill involved, although it wasn't a ton. It wasn't like an AMAX necessarily. This is an S tier gun for me, easy.
Yeah,
Easy
I remember
S-tier.
there were so many interesting builds for this. I think one I would run a lot was an iron sight build with the long barrel. And then extended mags. But again, there were so many builds. A lot of people would run the axial with it. A lot of people would run it like more as an SMG, but I think you're right. I think the XM4 was better as like a proper SMG build, but during Verdansk, when guns were properly balanced, I feel like there was no better mid-range AR than the Cold War AK. So I agree, this also has to go in S tier. Cold War, we had some great and very memorable weapons, very fun guns. That's when Warzone was really fun. And unfortunately, that's also when Verdansk had the worst lighting we've ever had in Warzone. I wish it was just the same lighting we have now in Urzikstan, because that would basically have been the perfect Warzone experience right there. But yeah, I love that sucker.
Yeah. Really fun. Really good gun. Next is the OTS-9. This was a very niche gun, but it was popular because it was so good up close. It was fast. I think the fire rate was just like fairly fast. It wasn't insane or anything.
It was a good fire rate, yeah.
I want to say like 800-ish RPM. But don't quote me on that. And it was just the gun for inside people. It had a lot of character in that if you were within its first damage range, which was literally like 6 meters or something, pretty short, you killed faster than everything. But outside of that, like its second damage range was pretty close, and it was a pretty steep drop off. So it was very dependent on you getting inside people. But if you did, which you could do a lot on Verdansk, you would just delete people. So it was a very niche gun, but it was so good up close that it was more widely used than the niche would maybe make you think, because of how insanely fast it would kill. And because it had good sprint to fire and ADS, you could get inside people like that, just sprint up to them and then just start shooting. No problem. I never loved it because, well, I mean, number one, we played on KBAM, so I did not want to.
It was a little bit harder to use
5 meters
from what I remember.
People.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when someone would run up on you with this, you couldn't win unless you had one yourself. So I didn't love it, but I respect what it did and that it was kind of balanced that way. I think we were in like the golden age of SMG balancing at this point, where there were a ton of viable SMGs, depending on what you wanted to do, that were fairly balanced. In this case, it wasn't balanced because it killed too fast up close. But then they eventually toned it down, and I don't know if they gutted it or balanced it appropriately. But for me, this is a B tier gun.
Really? That's
really
shocking.
It
was still one of my favorite SMGs, but definitely a little bit harder to use. It was between this and like the Mac 10 when they were really good. I was trying to figure out some info on it. Wow, it's interesting to look at. This gun, it was like a 495 time to kill at first damage range. That's like so much faster than what we have now. Yeah. That's just how it was back then. OTS-9 for me has gotta be, it's an A tier. It was very, very fun. It was just, a little bit harder to use, but inside of like a building, it had insane strafe speed, very fast gun. So like inside of a building, there's like no SMG you'd rather have. Because I remember the Mac 10 generally had less mobility, but it was a lot better as a longer ranged SMG build. But the OTS just absolutely melted up close, yeah. Really
Yeah.
fun gun. I liked using that a lot.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the OTS 9, I would say, too, probably in a lot of people's top SMG category for Warzone.
Yeah, for sure. It was really popular. Okay, next, the Diamatti. So this was another pistol, and it was overpowered because it was not full auto like the Sykovs. It was a burst fire weapon, though. So it was a 3-round burst, and you could use it akimbo. And that's why it was overpowered. I remember this less than the Sykovs. No, excuse me. That's not true. I remember them more than the Sykovs because even though they came out, I think, after the Sykovs did, maybe they didn't, but I think, no, they came out before because they were on the launch of Cold War. They were in at launch. This was a launch gun. So I guess they did come out before the Sykovs. These were overpowered for longer than the Sykovs were. Quite a bit longer. And they were not quite as disgusting as the Sykovs were for that week before they got balanced. But they were still quite disgusting and overpowered. And I found them awkward to use myself also because they were burst fire. So it just felt kind of weird. And dying to them was super unfun and unfair. And I didn't like using them. So these are actually going D tier for me. Did not like this meta. Was very annoying.
I don't remember it very much. I vaguely remember using them, but it seems like it didn't last long, or again, it was one of those things where I just wasn't playing much during this or not. This is going in forgettable for me. Because when I saw this on the list, I really had to sit there and think. I'm like, the Diamattis, what? But then I remember like bursting kids from pretty far away because it was overpowered. But very few memories of it, so I'm just putting it in forgettable. Oh boy, the DMR 14. That's the next one here. Oh wow,
the DMR 14. So this was, I would argue, and it's not even an argument because it's just a statement of fact. This was the most overpowered gun that's ever been in Warzone. By a lot. By a lot. Its damage per mag was probably 400,000. I mean, you couldn't even drive vehicles, literally, in Verdansk when this was meta. And this happened over Christmas break as well. So, I don't know exactly what happened, but they did a patch. And then they said, okay, see you in 3 weeks. We're going to go spend time with our families, which we don't deserve to do. And the DMRs were insane. I don't know how many bullets it was to kill. If you sprinkled in a headshot, I want to say 3, maybe. They killed super, 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 super fast. Super easy to use, semi-auto, which was a novelty. And again, they did so much damage that you couldn't even drive vehicles for Christmas break. That's what, like, I remember Jake and I having a conversation about it. We got on to play some Warzone, and we were going to get in like a Bertha, which is what everyone always did on Verdansk. But we were like, dude, I don't think we should. Like, we're just going to we're going to be marked on minimap because we're driving. People are going to insta-disable the vehicle, and then we're going to have to run out in the open and die. I'd rather just run and hope they don't see us. And that's what we ended up doing for Christmas break, was not using vehicles anymore. That's how much damage the gun did. So if you're playing like quads, you just start team shooting a vehicle, and it would be disabled. If you're 4-shooting a vehicle at full health, any vehicle, it would be disabled in under 1 second, 1 Mississippi, literally. Like, it was so insane how strong this gun was. So yeah, this was, I mean, not good for the game, obviously, but I don't know where I put it. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
You don't know where to put it, huh? Interesting. This is well, I guess I get what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, the most broken gun we've had in Warzone history, in my opinion, and a lot of people agree with that as well. I think it was, especially bad because this was the first time that they just left for the Christmas break and left a broken gun in there. And then I'm pretty sure that was when they promised they would never do that again, and then they did that 2 years in a row following that.
Probably, yeah.
But I remember, just like, it seems like it could have been done, because it's like, wasn't this during COVID anyways? Like, why were you guys probably weren't even in the office? Couldn't some guy just log on from his computer at home and remove the game, remove the gun for a few weeks? I kind of feel like that's what they did when they got back. I think they did like remove it and then fix it and then put it back in. I don't remember, but grossly overpowered, insane. It basically was a full auto marksman rifle. It was like a full auto sniper rifle. It just tore people up and it dominated the meta, and you could not get away from it at all. Constantly plating up. And back then, at that point in Warzone as well, the plating animation was a lot slower, so it took forever to plate up 3 times compared to how it is now. So you're just constantly plating up. Could not cross anything in the open ever. Really bad. It's got to be in miserable because it was the worst meta that we've ever had in the game.
Interesting. I put it in C tier.
Wow.
Because it was so fun to use.
It was for 24 hours. Yeah, but I mean, we all stopped playing, so it obviously wasn't that fun, right? Because we definitely all stopped playing over that break.
True. We got over it. You set your PR on Verdansk with that, didn't you? You and Jake in Farmland?
Yeah.
Just killing people at Stadium with 1 bullet?
Basically, yeah.
Like, it was so dumb. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Super dumb. Super overpowered. But it was also, it's got to get elevated a little bit just for being the most absurd gun we've ever had. Like, it's funny how broken it was. Like, I can't believe it. And
that's why, to me...
They go away for Christmas break. Oh, just
classic
Activision. Yeah, exactly.
To me, like, that's why it either belongs in the lowest category or the highest category. Because it was either so much fun and it was broken that you loved it, or it just completely ruined the game. So I think you're wildin' for putting it in C, but okay.
Gotta average it out, yeah.
Do a little av.
Anyway, moving on. This gun, the Farah, I remember this, sort of. It was a gun that was like meta for no...
It was kind of meta like the Krig. Yeah, it had a higher fire rate than the Krig. The thing we never liked about the Farah is it took like 3.5 seconds to reload it.
It's a really slow reload, yeah.
And since it had the higher fire rate, like the Krig would reload a lot faster, if I'm not mistaken, and go through ammo less quickly. Yeah, so the Farah, it always felt a little weird to me, but I do remember using it from time to time. I remember it had some interesting irons as well. I don't know if that was on a barrel or by default, but the irons were a very odd shape. They're like a teardrop shape or something. Kind of weird. But yeah, overall, a pretty uninteresting gun. But I used it like more than the Krig. I know that, which I think a lot of people didn't like it. For me, the Farah is going in C tier, I think.
For me, it's forgettable. Like, I remember using it. I have like one distinct memory of being by train station. I think we were... Where was Twin Towers in relationship to train station? Was it north?
Twin Towers in relationship to train station. I
want to say it was north. I think I was like
northeast.
I was like
northeast.
Yeah. I was like kind of by there, but like closer to train station than that. But in that block of buildings.
Yeah.
I was on a roof shooting a Farah. That's like my only memory of it. Forgettable. Like,
God, I forgot Twin Towers, man.
Great POI.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So, moving on to a gun that is not forgettable at all. A great gun that
pretty good, yeah.
Pretty freaking good, yeah. The FFAR 1. This was the like this was one of those guns. I don't know if there was ever another meta where anyone did this, but this was the only time where people would have double FFAR loadouts. So they would have their primary FFAR and their secondary would also be an FFAR. That was like the strafe speed ADS build. Like it had the biggest thing it had, along with high fire rate and a great time to kill, was you can build it to have insane ADS strafe speed. And that made it really popular as like an SMG. So there was a time where people were just running 2 FFARs.
Yeah, the
like
double
all the
FFAR.
Super Sweats
Yep.
were doing that. Yeah. It was really fun to use. For me, I never did that because I hated having to like always be out of AR ammo. There was no backpacks at the time, so you couldn't stow extra AR ammo. So you were just always out of AR if you were doing that. And if you're playing like quads with everyone else on your team also doing this, then if you squad wipe someone, you're not getting that much ammo because like your teammates are all picking that up also.
Yeah.
So you were like throwing muties and stuff constantly. So I never really did that. But I did use it as a sniper support gun, and it was really, really fun for that. Because it also had pretty good irons too.
It had really good irons, and it beamed from very far away. This was another gun similar to the Psychov in that the way they nerfed it was just killing its mobility, which was a really stupid way to nerf it. But I remember how slow the ADS time got on that gun. Do you remember that when they nerfed it? If you like aiming down sight it was crazy, man. And then they never buffed it later.
ADS time, you're right. Yeah.
So like the gun it didn't even have a good time to kill anymore, but the ADS time was actually like double all of the other ARs. It was so stupid. It was such a bad way to nerf it. It was a stupid way to nerf it, but it did work because people stopped using it because it was abysmal because of that. Even if it had a pretty good time to kill, they just stopped running it. So that was kind of a shame, but definitely one of the most popular, most remembered Warzone 1 Verdansk metas, I would say. Probably like that and the Kar 98, I bet, are like 1 and 2 in people's memory of a Verdansk era gun. So I think because of that, the FFAR has to go in A tier for me.
It's an A tier for me as well. Yeah. It was really fun, but it was also like very overpowered.
Yeah.
All right, so we got 3 more here. The next one is the Gallo SA-12.
Ooh, this was a
also
fun one,
known
man.
as the Spaz-12, a semi-auto shotgun. I remember one of your clips with this. I think we put it in our little
I think that one was in there too.
Verdansk video or whatever. This was a fun little gun. It was never like ubiquitously meta.
Correct.
But some people would use it all the time. The upsides were very high fire rate, very good mobility, unlike a lot of these shotguns, and good time to kill and decent damage range as well. And then the downside was it was a shotgun, so it had less range than like an SMG, couldn't shoot people at like 30 meters. And also it did not have any box mags, so you had to manually top load shells. Not nearly as bad as like a street sweeper. Like the reload speed was fine enough, but you were loading 1 shell at a time. I never used it too much, and I don't know why. I'm not sure why I didn't use it
This
too
was
much.
a fun one, man.
But it was it was fun. I used it a lot in multiplayer, but I don't remember why, but for some reason I didn't use it much in Warzone. Maybe there was something I liked more that was meta at the time. I don't really remember very much. But I do remember seeing this every once in a while. Yeah.
It was never as broken as the other SMGs or as popular, but I liked it because I want to say you could get like 12 round extended tube, extended mag, whatever they called it. And it had a pretty fast reload as well. So like that 12 rounds, you can get a couple downs, reload 5-6 shells fairly quickly, get another down or 2. So I always really liked it. I thought it was fun. It had insane mobility. Never considered one of the broken shotguns though. And guess I don't really know why. It's probably just it didn't have the insane close range time to kill or the long damage range like some of the other ones had.
Yeah.
Basically, instead of being an overpowered or extremely broken shotgun, it was just a really good shotgun, and it was a really good secondary weapon. So for me, the Gallows, I'm putting that in the B tier.
Okay. I'm putting it in forgettable. I honestly don't remember it that much. So hard for me to rank, but moving on to a gun that is not forgettable.
No.
One of my favorites. Another one of my favorites, kind of for basically the same reasons I really love the AMAX. I really love this next gun, the EM2. It was like the AMAX on steroids, basically. It had even better headshot multiplier than an AMAX, which was already good. Even better time to kill than an AMAX, which is already very good. But it also had even more recoil than an AMAX. So it was all the things I talked about when we were talking about the AMAX, about how this was like the gun where it introduced a pretty big skill gap. This introduced an even bigger one. You could hit all your shots with it at long range, or like a lot of them. Unlike like a Val, doesn't matter how good you are, unless you're cheating, you're not hitting every shot at 80 meters. But like an EM2 was possible, but it was pretty tough. Thing had recoil, but it was like predictable, manageable recoil.
Yeah, I agree.
And it also, it just had a really, really fast time to kill if you were landing bullets. And it had a huge skill gap. And that made it really, I think it was a little too overpowered, but they nerfed it and they made the headshot multiplier, I think 1.4 to 1.0. They ruined it. This was not incrementally
Caldera,
balanced, unfortunately.
And they added recoil to it, a lot of recoil. And it was so dumb because people didn't use it. There was a very small group of pretty much all K-BAM players that used it. Because like at times I didn't even like it because you would miss so many shots at range. It was like the most perfectly balanced assault rifle. And I will never, ever forgive Raven for gutting it for no goddamn reason in Caldera. For no reason. And it felt different. That's what the best thing was.
Exactly.
During Caldera, they had made it so every Vanguard assault rifle, LMG, everything had a variable zoom optic, so you can zoom 6 times with it and still have no recoil. And then over here, you have an EM2 where you're using a puny little axial 3 times on Caldera, so you were already at a disadvantage there. It had way more recoil than all those guns. It had less damage per mag than half of them, because some of these guns had like 80 round drum mags on them as an assault rifle.
Yeah, yep.
And then they gut it for no reason, and it was the only gun that felt different in a period of every single gun feeling the same. So that pissed me off to no end. I hate that they did that. They're stupid. It was a miserable, ridiculous change. EM2 for me is S tier.
Yeah, it's S tier for me as well. It's right above the AMAX. Like everything I love about the AMAX,
I like the EM2
just
more.
Amplified it.
Yeah. It was a very fun, extremely satisfying gun to use. Rewarding. I think that's the biggest thing. Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like the AMAX didn't give me that feeling so much. Maybe because when we used the EM2 a lot, it was actually in Caldera, even though it's a Cold War gun, and the time to kill in the game was slower at that point. So hitting long range shots with a difficult to use gun felt a lot more rewarding than using the AMAX and MW19, because the AMAX time to kill for that game, I mean, probably like 250, 300 milliseconds faster than what the EM2 was in Caldera, because of the health changes and everything they made.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, massive L in Raven's part to nerf that thing. That pissed me off.
I know. I remember we both were seething. I remember reading the patch
because it made no damn sense. Yep.
Because it didn't make any sense. Yeah. It was like, what are we doing? Yeah. So that was a shame. But before that, it had its day and it was long. And because it was balanced prior to that absolute gutting during Caldera, it was not really nerfed. It was just like the gun you would use if, you were very skilled, or you were doing well that day or whatever. So anyway, last gun here on the list before we get to some honorable mentions is the MG82. Okay, so This was one of those guns also that was not overpowered for very long. It was a DLC gun. It was added late stage Verdansk. And when it got added, it was like super giga broken because it was an LMG. So you had that 100 round default mag, I'm pretty sure. So it's like a free attachment slot. And also it had a ridiculously fast fire rate, like really fast fire rate, but also quite a bit of damage and not too much recoil. Its biggest downsides were it did ADS quite slow. I remember that. So, and handled slow, as it should have. And it also reloaded slow because it was a box mag. But you had 100 rounds. You'd chew through them pretty quick because the fire rate was so fast. But that also made it very forgiving. And since it didn't have that much recoil and a ton of velocity, you would just zap people.
It had
and
very low recoil, yeah.
Yeah. I think I talked about this recently, but I have a very distinct memory of being in the ruined stadium of Verdansk 84. And with Jake and Lag and someone else. And we were all using the MG82. And we were in a team fight against some other people who hadn't unlocked the gun yet, probably, or something. And we squad wiped them so fast that we all started laughing. And then we were just laughing, and we were like, dude, this gun is so broken. This is so stupid. And then we got right back in our cars, kept driving off. But this didn't last long at all. I mean, I don't even know if it was a full week. I think it was like 3 days and they nerfed it. And then no one was really using it anymore. But for a couple days, it was really fun.
Yeah, I remember it being good for a little while.
Considerable downsides.
Most of my memories were actually leveling it in Plunder. I remember playing Plunder. The whole lobby would land Storage Town on Verdansk. I'm talking the whole lobby. And everyone would be using this. So whatever the max player count was for Plunder at that time, like 80 or 100 or something, every single person would be there. And the best part was, if you landed and got some kills, everyone would be floating in to respawn, and there was like very little spawn protection or something, and you're just beaming everyone out of the sky, and you were leveling that gun so quickly. So that's actually where most of my memories come from. It was crazy in Plunder with that thing. But it was fun for a short period of time, yeah. But like, again, when I think about it, I mostly think of just leveling it, so it must not have been meta for that long at all. So for that, I'm probably putting it in C tier.
Yeah, I put it in C.
Yeah, that lines up.
I put it in C. Yeah.
Right in the middle. Fun little gun.
Yeah. So that's it, but I have a couple of honorable mentions. So one gun, honorable mention, and this really just should have been in the tier list.
I know what you're going to say, yeah.
But I forgot to add it, is of course the Cold War MP5.
Oh, that's not what I was thinking at all, but yeah.
This was a meta gun for like a long time.
Oh my god, yeah.
And it was the middle ground between like the OTS-9 and like a MAC-10 or something, where it killed faster than a MAC-10 and every other SMG up close besides the OTS-9, but it also had a longer damage range than the OTS-9. So it was the middle ground gun between the like really optimizing for inside buildings versus having a little more versatility, but still killed very fast up close. So it was really, really good. And it had a little bit slower fire rate. That was like kind of the only downside. And also I think a slower reload as well. But it was really, really strong. And it was meta for quite a while as well.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that.
But it wasn't like super oppressive like an OTS-9 ever was. So that should have been in the tier list. I forgot to add it in, but if I was gonna, yeah, we'll just say it's an honorable mention. I would have probably put it in A tier though.
You're right.
It was quite good.
That was a fun one. That was one too, where it was either a barrel or a blueprint, where some people would run the setup where the front post would be round, and then I think there was another setup that was similar to the MW2 MP5 or Lockman sub, where like the front post was open, if I'm not mistaken, and I think I preferred that build if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, I totally forgot about that one. That was a popular one. Yeah, shout out to the MP5.
Yeah.
There were a lot of interesting guns in Cold War. See, I thought you were going to say the C58. I mean, that was one of the most popular AR metas for a while. That wasn't on the list.
Oh, yeah.
So C58 was on there.
That's an honorable
I never
mention.
loved it that much, but it was a popular one. That would probably go in like B tier for me.
I'd put it in forgettable. I barely...
It was popular for a long time, but I never loved
know,
it. I remember
but, like,
Lag. Lag loved the C58. He used that thing for months, it felt like. That's all he used. Yeah, what are some other ones? The LC10,
That was terrible.
Tech 9. Was the Tech 9 good?
I
don't remember.
I don't think so. Another honorable mention I have is the Stoner LMG. And this was immediately when the integration happened. For some reason, there was a particular stock attachment you could put on the Stoner, and maybe some other attachments as well, that had it strafing faster than like any other gun in the game. Like faster than the meta FFAR strafe the Stoner had.
Yeah.
So this was like right when the integration happened though. So the Cold War like muzzles were still terrible. There was no like monolithic suppressor equivalent. So it was kind of like a meme, but it was also good. I mean, people were mating it for a little while and getting a lot of kills with it. That would be an honorable mention as well for me. But I don't remember any other honorable mentions.
Some of the snipers too, maybe just like the Pellington, Tundra, and ZRG. Well, the Pellington wasn't very fun, but Tundra and ZRG. No. But Tundra and ZRG, those were some fun snipers. But I think again, like the ZRG became popular in Caldera, so it felt more like a Vanguard gun. Tundra also, some people use that, but I never saw a reason to run it when like the Swiss existed and did everything the Tundra did. But that was a fairly popular one.
Yeah, I think it had really fast handling, maybe. Or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The Hauer 77 pump shotgun, that kind of sounds like that was, I vaguely remember that in Warzone. I feel like that could like 2 pump.
It's probably one of those solo pump guns.
Yeah, maybe.
I remember it in multiplayer a lot. I really enjoyed it because
Yeah.
it would one tap. But yeah, I never used it in Warzone.
Oh my god, we had so many melee weapons in Cold War. We had 12 melee weapons. Jesus Christ.
It's so offensive to me.
Yeah. And they were all insane.
Yeah. So anyway. All right. That's it, boys and girls. Hope you enjoyed. So yeah, this went longer than we kind of expected, but that's totally okay. So a couple guns we haven't gone through are all of the Vanguard guns, all of the MW2 guns, and all the MW3 guns. So eventually we will revisit this tier list, and we will do a part 2 and maybe a part 3 even if we need to. If you guys want that, let us know. And let us know how you enjoyed this. And if you want to see other tier lists of other types in the future, let us know about that as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Patreon.com/thedropshot. Best way to support the show. Ad-free, early access episodes, and 5 bonus episodes a month. Stay humble.
Stay humble.